Okay, good evening, everyone. And so we are back with another session on CLAT. So, as Fridays, we do the strategy session. And this time we have a very special guest, actually. Unfortunately, we could not do this session last time for some reason. But we are going ahead with that session. And I'm sure I already got a comment, big fan. Pradyot, that's for you. Allow me to welcome Pradyot first, actually, and I'm sure each one of you are aware Pradyot is All India Rank 2, CLAT 2024, and he is heading to National Law University, Bangalore. His classes are going to start from the first week of July, so we are just having that discussion before we started with this session. And we are already getting comments, Pradyot. We are all big fans of yours, actually. So, of course, and that wonderful smile of yours. So, Pradyot is from Malaya Aditi School, Malaya Aditi International School in Bangalore, and so I think that's a wonderful part, isn't it? You'll be staying in Bangalore itself, but of
Yeah.
course you'll be part of the residential campus. So that's Pradyot Shah with us. Quickly, Pradyot, I'll be starting with a very simple question, actually. So, how did you get to know about CLAT, and what motivated you to take the exam?
Initially, I heard about CLAT from a few friends who were also looking to get into the profession, and there were a couple teachers in my school who were like I was just asking everyone for advice in general on what the approach would be, and they all said CLAT would be the way to get into NLUs and NLS. So I think last year one of my seniors had also gotten in, and he advised me you can write this, and I mean that's basically how I got into just the CLAT. And then we approached Cartier Launcher and we enrolled with them.
Yeah, so you are a two-year program student, I remember
Yeah.
actually, and your mentor for the entire duration of the program was Mr. Rahul Reddy, who himself secured rank 3 in the examination, though he wrote with a different objective, and it was great to see you both guys. So, guys, Pradyot's video is already there on the channel itself, actually, but we thought let him come live for the sessions with the students so that you can also ask questions. So we'll continue with this session. You can also post your questions and we'll pick up some of the relevant questions and definitely Pradyut will answer that. While we'll try to cover as much as possible during the course of the session, and I'm sure most of the questions you guys are going to ask, I'll also try to cover that. So, of course, Pradyut, one thing which is very important to understand these days is that now CLAT is happening while the students are still in class 12. So earlier it used to be after class 12, they would be not so much that stressed, I would say, because they would take care of their board examination and then get time to revise. But now it is along with the class 12. So how did you manage that brought that balance to your preparation when it came to CLAT prep as well as your school curriculum?
Uh, so balancing school and CLAT was especially tough for me because I took up science in school, and this was IC as well. So initially, I was a bit confused because my grades were dropping and I wasn't doing that well in my mocks. But I eventually learned to prioritize and figure out what exactly is working for me. And towards the last few months of maybe I think the year right before CLAT, I almost completely stopped going to classes, and I'm really thankful to my school because they let me do that and they gave me the opportunity to do that. But I would end up going on the weekends for CLAT classes and during the entire week finishing my homework, finishing my tests, everything. So we had weekly tests, so it was quite a big burden. But I think it's doable. It's definitely doable. Like I know so many people who do it, and the it will be hard in the start, but eventually just follow the flow and figure out things for yourself. That's the best advice anyone can give you.
Yeah. So, in fact, not everybody would be that lucky that you got the permission from the school not to go for the classes, actually. So, but every student will not be that lucky. They'll have to definitely go for their classes, actually. Can you share your daily routine so when you're preparing, and how did you manage your time on a daily basis, kind of?
I mean, are you asking about the last few months or towards the
Maybe
initial?
overall, how did you begin, and then how did all it ended up actually towards the last
So,
as you move closer to the exam?
so overall, I mean, obviously, I'd ramp up the work I was giving towards CLAT. Initially during 11th, I was just attending all the classes, writing writing all the practice sheets and everything that they gave, asking questions. Like that's the most important thing you can do for CLAT, which is asking questions and figuring out which scenario applies where. Then when mock started, I started doing those mocks every day, every week, and I do an additional mock in the entire week, so 2 mocks a week. So just get up, go to school, come back, do a bit of homework, then I do a bit of reading, like maybe read the newspaper or like read some news or maybe an article from the Indian Express, something like that. And then I'd sit and write the mock and later analyze it. I'd go on call with a few of my friends, like one of my friends, Nigang, he also got into NLS. So me and him would regularly go on calls and like just discuss the questions we got wrong, the questions that we thought we shouldn't have gotten right but got wrong. So those questions are, it's really important that you do this, just mocks in general. And yeah, that's it. I then revise and go back to sleep. Then towards the end, we ramped it up a bit more. A few of us stopped going to school, including me, and we just do maybe, I think 4 mocks a week, and the rest of the time I would work on logic, legal, whatever it is, and obviously GK, which didn't work out, but yeah.
Yeah. So that's the most toughest part because you don't know where it is going to end actually when it comes to GK. You mentioned about Indian Express. You used to read that actually. In fact, we always tell the students that one source of news is newspaper itself. So that is something which you should read on a daily basis. So what exactly, because this question comes to us quite often actually, how do we read the newspaper? Where to focus upon? Because there is so much to read on. Now that you have that experience, I would want you to share that with every student out here.
So I would say, generally speaking, and this might be a bit of a, some people might not agree with this. The first page is usually not that helpful. You want to, because it'll be filled with stuff like politics or whatever. So that's not that relevant in CLAT. What you want to focus on is the editorials, which is extremely good because they give like highly relevant topics. Number one, and number two, they help improve your English and your reading skills. So editorials would be the main thing. Then sports again, just briefly run through it, see if there's any major upcoming event, and yeah, that's literally it. I mainly focus on the editorials.
Yeah, that's wonderful, actually. So, in fact, this question has also come how you stayed consistent throughout, actually. And I was about to ask this. How did you stay motivated throughout your preparation, actually? Because it's a long journey. You started early when you were in class 11th, actually. And it's definitely a long journey, actually. Even if you start in class 12, still it takes around 7, 8 months of preparation, actually. Staying motivated is very, very important all throughout that duration. So, how did you do that, actually?
So obviously there were ups and downs in my preparation. There were some days where I just felt like quitting, but I think that's just a part of the process, and you have to get through it. I used to just talk to my friends, talk to my peers, talk to others who were writing CLAT, and like they'd explain how they went over the same conundrum. And I think talking it out really helps, whether it's with your mentors or whether it's with your friends. So just that this is why I recommend offline classes, because you build that kind of environment surrounding yourself with these kind of people. And I think just, yeah, talking it out with them and just taking it easy on yourself when you have a bad day, those are things that will help you just keep moving it along.
Okay. So, what were your biggest challenges during the entire course of preparation? There are challenges always, actually. So, according to you, what challenge did you face actually when you were preparing for the examination?
Obviously, number one, I think we mentioned this before, was balancing school and CLAT. And number two would be, there were certain phases during the entire preparation where your mocks would just plateau you out, and you wouldn't be able to increase your score no matter what you did. So those were the most frustrating phases of it, and you had to work so much to just get even a 3 or 4 mark increase. So I think that was one of the most frustrating and hard things to get over. And the way I got over it was just staying consistent, believing in myself that I can do it no matter what. And again, like talking it out with friends, just that in general. Yeah.
In fact, when you have mentioned this a couple of times today, actually, that you had friend actually who also made it to MLS, and you will be going together there actually. So you used to discuss together, actually, learn together actually, and that's what we call study buddy funda actually. So this all we mentioned. I think when Manhar topped the examination in 2020, actually, we spoke about that. It's always good actually, because to the audience, I would like to say, if you have a friend who is preparing for the similar examination, who is equally, I would say, determined to crack the examination, it's always good to have a peer with whom you can learn together, actually. So that really helps and also saves time to a larger extent, I believe. Because you do some part of it, somebody else does some part of it, and then when you discuss, that's how you learn together, actually. And that's अच्छा एक चीज बहुत कॉमन क्वेश्चन आता है इवन अदरवाइज मतलब if I talk about and for GK itself, and that question is already pouring up over here. Did you make notes for GK actually? Because a lot of students believe that we have to make notes actually, because some people have that learning style. So, did you also make notes when you were preparing for the GK for the examination? And
Uh,
how did you make, what was your plan like? क्या क्या notes में क्या करते थे? कैसे बनाते थे उसको?
So what I did was me and Mrigang, who I mentioned earlier, we formed a study group with two more of his classmates, and
Mhm.
this study group and GK group basically we just did a cumulative effort, and we'd make GK notes based of either Indian Express articles or the Hindu or Drishti IAS or maybe even our own CLAT's Manthan, career launches Manthan, and we just pick up a few articles which seemed important to us, make a list of all of them, divide it equally or depending on whatever section it was we were handling, and we'd make notes on it. And what we did was we'd get another person to proofread that work that we had done. So just in case there was anything to add or anything that they felt was unnecessary, so that was the entire fun of creating a GK group, and I think this doubled as a study group. So I would definitely recommend that you guys do that as well. Like form a group, even if it's like with people who are with people who are around you, people who are smarter than you. I'd say Gang was definitely smarter than me, and I think discussing and analyzing those questions with him generally helped me a lot in bettering my understanding. So yeah, GK, use all of these links, use all of these sources, and we use Google Doc. You can There are plenty of platforms you can use. Just make a compilation of all of these important topics, and you should be good to go. We did it month-wise. It depends on what your preference is ultimately, but we did it month-wise, and in those months we divided into each whatever topic it was, so like technology, sports, international, national, stuff like that.
So there was a lot of research going on. So you guys were doing a lot of research actually, and that is very, very important actually, and that will help in other exams as well. Before I proceed and I talk about the mocks, in fact, we did a session with GP sir and Siddharth sir earlier 2 weeks back on importance of mocks, and we spoke about your mock consistency drops hote the. So we showed actually your this thing actually over there as well. I would like to share this feedback which has come for you. Bhaiya is in my school and he is my biggest inspiration, and he has topped both CLAT and boards and still is the kindest, most humble, sweetest, nicest. We are lucky to know him and be a friend. So I think we have your school junior here actually attending the session for us. Shikha, I think, yeah, Shikha is there actually. She's attending the session. That's so wonderful, Shikha. And I could sense out, we had very limited interaction and over phone actually with him, but I could sense out what you are saying. Yes, he's very sweet. And as I said about his smile. Okay, somebody has mentioned that I get bored reading. Please tell me, how can I make reading interesting for myself?
So I tackle the reading, the command that came. So yeah, you are going to encounter topics that are extremely boring to read, or after a while you're going to get tired of reading so much. But I think you need to inculcate this practice of reading the important bits in an essay, or like in the paragraphs that come. Like after a certain number of mocks that you've done, you've like figured out what kinds of questions they can ask, and what are the main things that are like important in this particular paragraph. So once you've inculcated that sense, I think it becomes easy for you to like not skim read it per se, but like read it in a much faster pace than you if you were like actually reading like maybe a novel, right? So you figure out what parts are important, underline them, and you go ahead with that. Now, for the boring part, what I used to do was whenever I got bored of reading so much, I'd maybe take a break, obviously, or I would switch to something that I found particularly interesting to read. So I mean, I've always been sort of like a techie guy. So I would like, read maybe science or maybe something in tech that would intrigue me instead of maybe reading like politics or, something in geography, right? So every time that you get bored, it's important to keep it going and not slack off. Maybe take a 5 or 10 minute break and get back to it, but it's important to just, stay consistent.
It's just like rebooting yourself, just like when your laptop or mobile hangs, you reboot it actually. So it happens with your brain actually. So you have to reboot, you have to give yourself that short break. But what is key over here, all these students, what is key over here is what he mentioned is you have to be consistent. You can't leave actually. You have to be consistent. You have to manage that actually. You have to continue moving forward. Pradyut, I'll come back to mocks. You are very consistent in writing the mocks, and especially when we talk about the countdown mocks, you didn't miss actually, except I think one of that actually. You took almost every mock. So, how important you believe when it comes to learning? How important are the mocks actually, and especially for an exam like that?
So I mean, if you're any competitive exam, this applies to every one of them. There is only this much that you can actually learn from maybe taking those practice sheets or like reading, right? Mocks help imagine how the exam will go, and it gives you the same kind of pressure, the same kind of like, intensity, because of the time constraints or because of the amount of the seriousness that suddenly comes up. It's very different from just writing a mock for time pass. So you need to inculcate that thing into yourself, that I write every single mock seriously and I write it consistently, because without that you're not going to be able to level yourself up and like, up your skills. So every single mock can be a stepping stone for you to reaching that 100 or whatever score you desire towards the end. And I think that the most important part of your entire preparation, writing as many mocks as you can, but good quality mocks. This is something I'll mention later, but good quality mocks, writing as many of them as you can, and just practicing and practicing. That's all CLAT is.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So from mock, I'll straight away move to the actual examination. CLAT 2024 was very different, contrary to the expectation. And I'm sure, just like everybody else, you had your share of surprises. So, what was the thought which, the moment you saw the paper, what was your thought first, actually?
So when I started reading, I've always been really skeptical of mocks, because if there's one easy section, you're gonna end up with a really like insanely hard section towards the later part of it. But initially I was like, okay, wait, this is really easy. Like English was really easy. So maybe like math will be messed up and very very problematic or something like that. But as I kept going through the mock, I think there was just like a smile on my face that just kept growing, because I knew it was going to be a very easy mock and I knew I was going to score well. So I think I knew practically most of the answers then itself. And when I came out, I remembered just like, thinking in my head, okay, wait, number one, this was a really easy mock. Number two, exam. And number two, the cutoff is going to be very high, which I mean, it turned out to be that.
How many, if you remember even vaguely, actually, how many questions did you took up from the quantitative techniques section?
From the
Quantitative techniques, QT.
I did everything. I think all of the
You
questions
did
I did
everything.
everything. Yeah, but
Uh,
I got one wrong.
so I'll just take a moment here actually, and when we do the mock analysis, I, Suhasini, Siddharth, we always tell the student, because this is something which is going to make a lot of difference, and especially when a paper which is going to be easy like CLAT 2024, the quantitative techniques can be a decider, can be a game changer, especially from an NLU perspective. You might get a better NLU allotted if you have done well over there, and when it's a paper easy, when you know that cutoffs are going to be high, so that really helps actually. So guys, please remember, so we have been telling this, at least now you can hear Pradyot actually. So he attempted every question of QT. It's all about consistency, it's all about practice. If you keep doing it, I think that really helps actually. You should not ignore कुछ भी difficult नहीं है. It's all about practice. If you keep on practicing, if you keep on doing, put your efforts, I think even all questions would be possible. But yes, I think still that, so there would be some challenges which comes on in terms of time management and all actually. So what was your usual time plan for each of these section? Like how much time would you devote? Was there something specific or you would go with the flow?
I mean, obviously the number of questions was short in midway, so we had to rethink all of that. And there was a lot of speculation involved because we didn't know exactly how many questions would come. The consortium had just given
Yes,
a range of questions.
range of questions.
But I think English was generally, I mean, obviously this will take lesson. You can devote, depending on what your weakest subject, I mean, section is, you can devote more time there and less time for your best one. But for me, it was generally around 20 to 30 minutes for English, maybe at max 10 minutes for GK at max. And then logic would be 30 minutes, 30. Legal would be 35. And the remaining, how much ever was for quant.
Yeah, wonderful. In fact, so that really works. That's what we. So I'll before moving on, I'll take a couple of questions from the audience, and I think it's all about the sections itself. So somebody is more concerned about how to do about quantitative techniques. Somebody is about logical reasoning. So we'll start with logical reasoning. How did you prepare the logical reasoning section actually? So. मतलब how much time would you devote actually, and in what way you would go and practice those questions?
Okay, so what your first step could be, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys are months into prep already, so this might not apply to you. But for those who might be starting now, if you're, especially if you're with CL, you can take one of the logic books and just go through it to get a better understanding of everything. Write all of your tests and practice sheets that they give you, and I think the most important part is discussing with your teacher. So we had Sridhar sir, and I'm really grateful to him because I don't think I would have ever done this well in logic without him. So asking questions and like if there's any problematic question that comes up in mocks, discussing it out and understanding the logic behind it is the most crucial part for logic, because without that you're not going to understand how the person who's written the questions or written the paras thinking. And I think that's the most important thing, putting yourself in their shoes and figuring out what they mean by this question, or this entire para means. So that would be number one. Number two would be to recognize all of the different types of questions that they ask, the different formats that are there, the different variations of them, and getting acquainted with them, and just getting knowing how to answer them in general. And again, like I said, discussing it out with your peers or with your teacher would be the most crucial thing for logic. You can't, there isn't much you can do except for maybe GMAT questions. I never personally did GMAT questions because Sridhar sir told us not to, but I know a few people who did them as well. And yes, it might help you better your understanding. But logic is something that is very intuitive and it's very in there. So you have to gain a better understanding to be able to answer them.
Yeah, again, I think it's about being regular over there actually. uh, when you were writing the mocks, when you were preparing for the examination, I'm sure you committed certain mistakes as well actually, every student does. So what are those common mistakes which generally aspirants commit actually, and while preparing for the CLAT, and how did you worked on them and improved upon them actually?
So this might be again a bit surprising, but number one would be OMR mistakes. The number of people I know who used to commit OMR mistakes like regularly is incredibly high. So you have to be focused while filling in your OMR sheet and make sure that you don't misfill a bubble. What someone advised me to do was ticking the answers after each, like ticking the answers for each para and then bubbling it in together for each paragraph. So that would help reduce the number of mistakes you make. That might be a tip you guys can use. The second biggest mistake that I think people used to do was skim reading the paragraph for these kind of questions, like maybe logic, because you can't skim read logic. It's something that you need to understand very, very well to be able to answer. Maybe legal, maybe English, but definitely not logic. Number three would be taking too much time in quant. The reason I kept quant for last in my sequence was so I spend the least amount of time in it, because I knew that if I gave it first preference, I would end up spending 15 20 minutes on it, and then my entire paper would go for a toss. So you want to make sure that you don't spend too much time on these sections, and if you're not in the flow or not able to answer something, just move on. Don't overthink a question. And this applies for all five sections. Just move on, keep the flow going, because if once you stop and you start overthinking, you are going your brain is going to get all muddled up and you won't be able to keep that pace going.
In
And
fact,
maybe yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
in fact, I
maybe
say don't get into an affair with the questions. If you, it's not going to be lifelong, so if you don't understand, you are stuck. just move ahead because you'll be losing somewhere else actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
please go
that's the
ahead.
best.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the best thing about mocks. You can move on and then revisit it later if you have the time. And if you don't have the time, you can always approach your teacher and just ask what your entire doubt was in that question. And just this is why mocks are so important, because just practicing and seeing these types of questions that trick you and understanding how to answer them, that's the most important thing for CLAT. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll take a couple of questions, and before we'll call off it, of course, there is one area we spoke about as well, and that's quantitative techniques, the
Mhm.
mathematics. The fear remains actually, even those who are still like were doing well in the grade 10 actually when they had maths, they still fear the mathematics when it comes to 11th and 12th actually. So, how much time one should devote according to you, and how much effort would be required actually? So, if I look at from the the kind of questions which come in the paper, what according to you are important topics, and how much time one should give on a weekly or a regular basis?
So for quant specifically, again, I understand why a few people are afraid of it, but it is not hard per se. It's not trigonometry or calculus that you're doing. It's simple ninth grade or eighth grade math. So if you've done it till 10th grade, I don't see why there would be a reason to fear it, except for maybe just that, you're gaslighting yourself into thinking that it's a hard section. It's not. You just need to be regular with practicing and getting yourself more efficient at doing those calculations, and maybe figuring out trips on how to tricks to get better, right? And quant, there are mainly like six, I think, topics that are asked, which is ratio, proportion, distance, time, trains. So you can ask your math teacher for this, and they'll give you the basic six, seven most important questions and how to answer them, and that's it. You just have to practice for math.
It's all basic arithmetic
It's
actually,
all
if one
basic
has to
arithmetic, so
basic.
it won't even be more than like maybe 4 or 5 numbers, or like percentages, stuff like that. It is not hard.
Yeah. So another area which concerns most of the student and the approach, most people are not able to find the right approach for it is writing mock is definitely important, but analyzing your performance is equally important actually, and I believe it is more important than just taking a mock actually. So how would you analyze your performance? कितना समय लगता था एक पेपर को, एक mock paper को analyze करने में? How much time would you spend analyzing that actually?
This became kind of like a running joke between me and my study buddies. Was we took more time to analyze the mock than actually write it, because there would definitely be these kinds of questions where you would end up. I mean, what we did was we'd go through all of our mistakes and all of the hard questions. We'd mark them as we were writing the mock, and mistakes obviously later. And then we'd sit on a call after a bit and like, just uh, ask each other if if there were questions that maybe they got right and I didn't. I'd ask them what their entire thinking process for that was. Then I'd explain my reasoning behind why I got it wrong or why I chose this other option, and then we'd see. So obviously you are going to end up at some questions where there's an impasse where you take up where you follow these up with your teacher, but most of our questions got clarified just simply by asking each other what our thinking processes for was for it. So I think that's extremely important, you sitting and actually putting in the work to analyze, figure out where you're going wrong, and figure out like the types of questions that are you're repeatedly getting wrong. So those patterns are always going to be there, and I think that's the one first thing that you should be fixing, which is the types of questions that I'm getting wrong and how do I solve them.
Okay,
So
wonderful. I think definitely we have covered almost similar questions were coming actually. So for those who joined late, we began with boards and CLAT preparation equilibrium only. So do watch the session once again to understand it better. Before we close this session, Pradyot, one very simple question. Uh, it's like you have been there, done that actually, and the youngsters are looking forward to you. As we saw through the comments, they really love you actually. So, what is your tip for the future CLAT aspirants? What is your advice for them actually?
my advice would just be, keep going at it. You have the capability in you. You just have to work hard and just stay consistent in everything you do. If someone like me can get AIR-2, then I'm sure all of you guys can definitely do better. So just keep at it, stay consistent, write your mocks, and that's it. Yeah.
So Shikha rightly mentioned at the beginning, one of the most humble guys you'll come across. So humility at its best, I would say. Okay, so Thank you so much, Pradyot, actually. And before I close this off, in fact, on behalf of entire CL family, LST family, I would say congratulations. And we are definitely looking forward to your journey at National Law School, Bangalore, actually. And we'll definitely catch up you there in the campus as well. And we'll definitely love to have you more coming more on this platform and interacting with the students. Of course, I know in the initial days are going to be very, very hectic. Will not disturb you. All the students who joined late, actually, I would request do watch the session from the beginning itself. He spoke about the board exams, the managing the board curriculum along with and he gave tips around the different sections, mocks, analysis, and all actually. So that would be all for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in today. And what he mentioned, I'll just do a quick recap. Have faith in yourself. That's the first thing. Have that belief in yourself. As I say, a battle is lost mentally, not physically. So don't lose that. Don't let that happen, actually. Try your best, but be consistent. Follow the advice, follow the tips, actually, from your seniors, from your teachers. And that is something which is going to stay. Thank you so much, Pradyot, for joining us today evening. And once again, all the best for your future endeavors, and we'll catch up soon.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for getting me here.